Tell me what you remember about contingency theories.
It was situational.
It thinks of a situation. So the situation or the context, even in some of the theories, it talks about task characteristics. Those are all considered. What else? There was a question on your quiz. It's follower-centered. So contingency theories are follower-centered. What else? Tell me some of the contingency theories that you remember that we've covered. So we have situational, path goal. What else? And the normative decision-making model. So path goal, or let's start with situational. Give me kind of your big overarching things that you remember about situational leadership.
S1, S2.
So kind of you have the leader styles, and there's 4 of them. What else?
The leader adapts.
The leader adapts. Yep. So they adapt or they match. So it's a matching theory. What are they matching to? So follower. We'll call them, there's developmental levels, and there's 4 of those. Anything else about situational leadership that's a pretty big takeaway?
It's also kind of task and relationship.
So task and relationship, yep. So based on behavior theory. So I'm going to say that behavior theory is kind of an overarching thing in contingency theories too, because we have that idea of task and relationship. For situational leadership, is it individual or group based? Leader to an individual or leader to a group of followers?
Group follower.
Group. And is it, how much is the situation considered? So we're going to kind of say it's low context, right? What do y'all remember about path goal?
It's all about motivation.
Motivation, yep. So it's saying here that as a leader, your main job is to help followers accomplish their goals. And so as a leader, you've got to figure out how to motivate. How do you motivate? What does path goal say?
By incentives or removing obstacles.
So we have this idea of obstacles or rewards. So you either remove obstacles or you give rewards to help people accomplish what they need to do. And you determine all of that as a leader. You determine whether it's better to remove an obstacle or provide a reward based on what? The context, yes. So you look at task, and then you also look at follower characteristics. So if you think back, there were a ton of characteristics that I told y'all you needed to make sure you went back and read and understood that describe followers. So how much authority do your followers prefer? How much ambiguity can they handle in a task? Is a task clearly defined or not? You've got to know all of those things to then decide, Do I remove obstacles, or do I provide a reward in order for them to be motivated to accomplish their goal? Is this one group-based or individual-based? Individual-based. Why do you say that? You're correct. It's individual-based, so it's looking at me, engage, me and Jonathan. How am I motivating each of them differently? What are the needs of them differently? Not y'all as a class as a whole. Huh?
Each person is different, and like how to motivate them.
Yep. So it really starts looking at that difference in motivation for individuals. Normative decision-making model. What do y'all remember about that? Yeah, so it's a decision tree. It's the questions. But what are you using the decision tree to do?
Come up with a style like autocorrect.
So it's a decision-making style. And we said overall we're going to focus on how many different decision-making styles? 4. So you need to know those 4. But kind of going back to the question from the quiz, what's the overarching premise of the decision-making model? What things must you consider as a leader to help you figure out what decision style to use? So commitment, and we're going to call that, so it's quality of the decision, and commitment of followers to the decision. And we could call that commitment buy-in, what have you, just people that are going to accept and support the decision. But that's what you're trying to figure out as a follower. Do you see any connections here with normative decision-making model and perhaps path goal theory or situational leadership?
It's all like describing different styles. Like it's kind of prescriptive of like, oh, if this is your situation, this is how you can act, or this is what you can do.
Yeah. So it's still going back to styles. There's still task and relationship in all of those. So that's something to really point out too, because even in path goal theory, when you start looking at those follower characteristics, you're going to start to see some task and relationship. One of those follower characteristics is affiliation. How much do your followers want to feel like they're a part of the group? Is that task or relationship? Relationship. And so if you are leading a group of followers who have a high need for affiliation, should you be more task or more relationship oriented? Probably more relationship oriented. With normative decision making model, you have 4 decision making styles, and those styles differ on how much you involve followers. It's all the way from the autocratic style of you're making the decision alone by yourself, to delegate where you completely give it off to followers. In between you have that consultation and group. Those two styles. How in the world do you know which one to use? If you tend to choose to use an autocratic decision-making style, are you task or relationship oriented more than likely? Task. And so what would that describe about your followers? They're task oriented. The commitment, them needing to be a part of the cause, doesn't probably matter so much as just getting stuff done. They probably have low needs for affiliation. You can start to see how these theories could start to inform each other. Today we're talking about leader-member exchange. What are 3 things that stuck out to y'all in the reading about leader-member exchange? So LMX. That's the next one we're getting to. We'll call that number 4. What? So we mentioned in and out groups. What else do y'all remember from your reading? Yeah, so the leader and the follower, we'll call that equally. We'll just say both are important in the conversation of LMX.
It focuses on like empowerment.
Ooh, group empowerment. I like that. So just from a first glance, how do you think LMX theory ties in to the rest of the contingency theories that we've talked about? Do you think it's a completely separate way to look at leadership, or do you think it provides substance or support to other theories we've talked about? Keep thinking on it. I want that to kind of be the big question that y'all are wrestling around with today while we talk about leader-member exchange. How does this theory either look at leadership completely different than everything else we've talked about, or how is it supportive of other leadership theories that we've talked about? So kind of keep that going in the back of your mind. When we talk about something that answers that question for you, make sure you write it down and remind yourself about it. So, groups exist in life, right? How many of y'all have been a part of a group before? A group, a team. Calvin, you never been part of a team before? Who in this class feels like you come to class every day and for the most part you pay attention pretty well in class? All right, Gage, come up front. Who in this class do you think are my favorites? And when you point to them, I want them to stand up.
Calvin.
Ooh, okay.
And Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Jace. And Markel. And yeah, that's it.
So why did you choose them? Why do you think they're my favorite?
You're always calling on Calvin and Jonathan. She answers a lot of questions, and so does Jace, and then Markel's always talking.
Markel's always talking. Why didn't you choose the other folks in class?
I don't know.
Is there anybody sitting that you would say, I thought I was one of Lauren's favorites? Anybody? I mean, legit? Katie? I mean, stand up if you want to. I mean, if you want to nominate yourself, if you're like, yeah, I thought I was one of Lauren's favorites in this class. Stand up. Okay. For those of you sitting down, are you saying, nope, I totally knew I was here? For those of y'all standing up, how's it feel? What's kind of your reaction when you were chosen?
It's a pedestal that I'm not the happiest to be on right now.
Why?
It's one thing to like when you like he said you like always call on certain people, and it's one thing to be called on someone, but it's another thing to actually like feel like this is like another level being called on. Like a level that I wasn't prepared for this morning.
All right. What about the rest of y'all? How's it feel to be called out as my favorite?
I personally don't like it. I'm not a big fan of favorites, so that's why.
You're like, I never asked to be here.
No.
No, I don't look at it as like a favorite. I think I look at it as like the way he picked is more your conversational students.
Okay.
Favorite ones.
Okay.
I don't think you have favorites.
Oh, thanks. I tried on it. Now, for those of you sitting down, any of y'all, like, what are y'all's reactions? What are you thinking as Gage didn't pick you? Why do you think he didn't pick you as my favorite? I'd be mad. I want to be favorite.
I feel like we also did like people who knew their names.
Ah, so he chose. Ah, so there's even an added element to it.
Cause like he like looked at Catherine and then like looked away and then like called someone else. So like I feel like he just knew these guys. He looked around, didn't want to be embarrassed by not knowing someone's name.
Yeah. How else do y'all feel? Those of you that weren't chosen as my favorite, what's your initial reaction?
I want to know what you're thinking right now.
Now, okay, everybody can sit down. Thank you, Gage. Now that we're not like obvious who's standing up, who's sitting down, would any of y'all that were sitting down maybe admit that, like, even though you don't want favorites or don't think there should be favorites, when you weren't chosen, was there a little piece of you that was like, oh, like, kind of wish I had been, like, but then you said, favorites don't matter. This is just, anybody have that kind of 2-second thought in their head? How many of you that did get chosen by Gage that you're like, I didn't think anybody was paying attention to me? You know, like you had an ounce of, hey, this kind of felt good, but then, oh shoot, I've got to stand here in front of everyone and they're all looking at me a little bit. I don't have favorites. I try not to, because that should be my goal, right, as a teacher. Can y'all think back to a class that you have been in where it was very obvious that the teacher had favorites? Let's talk about what that looked like. Somebody kind of describe the scenario for us.
My AP English teacher loved the football players so much, and it was so awkward. Like, this woman was just, like, out of college, and she would, like, literally bend over the table and be like, oh, can I help you? It's like, I'd be like, Miss Anderson, can you help me? She'd be like, no, I'm busy. Like, awkward. It was so weird. It was so blatantly obvious, too, and no.
How did it make you feel?
Bad. Uncomfortable, and just, like, not neat. I don't even know, like, half the time she didn't even pay attention that we were even there, like the females in the room. It was just strange and not good.
So how did that affect your motivation in her class?
I never wanted to go.
Never wanted to go to class. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Somebody else tell me about a time that you knew there, maybe you were the favorite. Somebody share that. So maybe the opposite side of the scenario.
I was my ag teacher's favorite, and I was on a bus with another team because my ag teacher was pregnant and she couldn't go, and the ag teacher from that team was super mean to me and saying that I just got everything handed to me because I was Miss Schultz's favorite.
Oh.
And was super mean. I went back and was he was super mean to me, and he has not been mean to me since. He still runs our county fair, but he just was like, well, you just get everything handed to you because you're Miss Schultz's favorite.
So because you were chosen as her favorite or perceived to be favorite, then when you got into another situation, opposite happened.
Yeah, because I was the president for 2 years of our chapter, but we had no participation within our 2 grades. So well, you just got president. And I was like, no, it's because no one else stepped up and she knew that I was capable and let me do it. So, and he's like, well, you juniors aren't supposed to be president and all this stuff. I was like, okay, I was texting her the whole time, he's being super mean.
What were you gonna share, Lexa?
I was just gonna say ag teachers usually pick the ones on the leaders as their favorites.
Okay. Who here played sports growing up? Okay. In sports, are there ever groups of people that are considered favorites and groups that are not? Let's talk about that. So that's a different scenario. We're not talking about classroom. We're talking about something fun.
I actually had the opposite. So yeah, I was one of my teacher's favorites, but that made it worse for me. Because if he was ever upset about everything was my fault, I had to do more than everyone else.
Ooh, that's good. So you feel like because you were part of the favorite group, he expected more of you. That's true.
In my high school, it was a big thing for the football team. It didn't matter if you sucked it up because we sucked it up as a team and didn't win anything my senior year. But if your parents were boosters or somebody was on the booster club for the football team, you were guaranteed to be the starter. You did not, no matter if they didn't show up to practice or anything, if your parent was on the booster team, which my parents were,
a girl like that on my high school volleyball team, and she sucked. But mama, right? But her mama came to everything, and so she got to. I won't say her name, Leslie. She. I hope she never sees this. But she always started, and I mean, coach always took her out after like 2, sets. But you're just like, oh my goodness, why? Softball. Wait. Any other examples y'all could think of where there's just kind of these two separate groups?
That happens within like the entire school too, like the people that don't play sports and the people that play sports. And I went to a small school, so it was easily visible.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the one, like, especially my school, like, the group and Joe, the group of, like, the athletes that were constantly in trouble at school got the most attention from coaches. Like, good attention, like, with their sports.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that were always just in trouble.
Okay.
The ones that were always little and, like, show practice and were never in trouble were the ones that just wrote over.
So, instead of calling these groups favorites or not favorites, we're going to use what the book says. And what does the book call these groups? In groups and out groups. In college, here at Oklahoma State, what would you say are some in groups? If we were to look at, let's start at a big macro level, macro view of Oklahoma State University.
Greek life.
In groups, you would say Greek life. Athletics. What else?
Like people that are on leadership teams, like Kasner, ambassadors, or
Athletics. So, I mean, I'm going to kind of just put like SGA, but y'all know what I mean, like student group leaders. Any other in groups?
I think the ag kids, but that's just being in the ag department.
So if we were to narrow, if I were to say Kasner in groups, we could come up with a whole different list, right? But we're going to kind of start with this macro view. Out groups. Who are our out groups? Huh?
Other students.
like foreign exchange students are like,
Yeah.
they're not called that in college though.
International.
Yes, they're not.
Yeah. What else?
I feel like slackers. I don't know, like ones that don't go to class or.
I think the older people that come back to school.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Non-traditional.
Oh man.
Oh. Oh good, yeah. I did that part.
So y'all said slackers. I'm going to call those uninvolved in the sense of like they're not part of a club or group. We have a lot of students on campus that are not really connected socially to things. What else?
What about NOC students?
Ooh, talk to me about them.
They're not technically involved in SU campus, but they are involved.
They're here, but we kind of pretend they're not. Yeah.
I don't know if this would like go into your uninvolved category, but like students that work and have jobs.
So full-time jobs, part-time. We haven't. What are some things we haven't talked about that could differentiate in groups and out groups at OSU?
So this is kind of something that I deal with is like being a transfer student. I didn't get the same experience that they got as freshmen and sophomores, so I'm kind of an average that way.
Yeah, transfer student. It's harder for you to come in and find a group, I would honestly say, as a transfer student.
And we honestly all kind of stick with our kids we transferred in with, like our JUCO. Like I know Carly said when we came on JUCO kids, and we all kind of just stick with them. We're a little bit combined, but pretty much.
Yeah. Now this is going to get a little, you might feel uncomfortable, but know that we're not having like any heated discussion or anything on this. But are there other characteristics that we often use that place people in groups or out groups that we haven't talked about yet? Such as, and let's just call it what it is. What's an in group at Oklahoma State and what's an out group at Oklahoma State?
Or the kids that walk around with cat ears.
Huh?
The kids that walk around with cat ears. Because I know I've seen plenty of them lately. I can't hear you. Cat ears. Like the kids that walk around. Furry cat ears. That people walk around with cat ears. I don't walk around with cat ears.
Let's just go that as like your dress code. Like
Dress code,
your
yeah.
dress defines who you are.
So what's the in-group going to dress like?
Preppy, short shorts.
Okay.
Or
Not and then you have us like starch
Preppy / I'm going to just call it Western wear. I don't know. And then what would you call the out group?
Like coming from, okay, this is kind of weird, but like me describing this place compared to the University of Illinois, like we don't have a lot of like, I know we preach that we're a diverse campus, like the office I work in, we're all about like diversity, but like when people dress diverse and look diverse, it's not as much.
Right.
I don't know how you dress that, but
we have definitely have like different religions that people dress by. And that kind of defines groups.
So can in-groups and out-groups be determined based off of faiths?
Yeah.
Would you say Oklahoma State has a predominant faith culture that may be an in-group? What would that be? Christian. And what would be the out-group? And no, when we say out-group, that doesn't mean bad or wrong. It just means that's not the majority. That's not the predominant culture characteristic. Other religions, other faiths, other beliefs would be the out-group at Oklahoma State. If we went to a different campus, kind of like Carly said, do you think that these would shift? Absolutely, because the culture is different. What's another characteristic that might be used here at Oklahoma State to determine an in-group or an out-group?
I mean, looking at our enrollment statistics, ethnicity.
Absolutely.
Like, only 5% of our whole enrollment is something of a minority.
Right. Absolutely. Only 5% of OSU's enrollment is minority enrollment. Do you think that unintentionally can cause in-groups and out-groups? Yeah. So what is our job as leaders when we're thinking about in-groups and out-groups?
Good best way, like, talking enrollment. If you have a class that's, this class, for example, your minority students either may get less attention or more attention depending on the teacher.
But what do we want? Do we want there to be in-groups and out-groups? Why not? What's some of the complications? What things happen as a result of in-groups and out-groups?
Makes people feel bad.
Makes people feel bad. And what happens when people feel bad?
honestly it can lead to like mental illness and stuff.
Absolutely.
Just like conflict in general, like when you put people in groups like that.
Yeah. Conflict. If this were a job, so not thinking about Oklahoma State University, if this were a job and there were in-groups and out-groups on a job, if you were part of the out-group at a job, what consequences or what things could happen as a result of that?
You get stuck with the work no one wants to do.
You get stuck with what no one wants to do, and so then what's your reaction to that work? Don't want to do it. So you're not satisfied, you're not motivated. So both from a cultural standpoint to a working standpoint, in-groups and out-groups are a big deal. And what I want to highlight for y'all with LMX is that LMX is all about the relationship between leaders and followers. So leader-member exchange, that relationship. And it's that one-on-one relationship between the leader and each individual follower that contributes to them being, the follower being part of an in-group or an out-group. Who gets to determine in-groups and out-groups? The followers, right? Can I sit here in class and tell y'all who's part of the in-group and out-group? I can, but it's probably not accurate. But could y'all, as followers, probably figure out in-groups and out-groups? Absolutely. So then, goodness gracious, what am I supposed to do as a leader if I want everybody to be part of the in-group?
You have to identify them.
You have to identify them. You've got to be pretty honest about what those individual relationships look like. And then you've got to figure out ways to help bring people into the in-group. Does everybody want to be part of the in-group? Some of y'all are shaking your head no. Why?
I just think you always have people that are very independent, and just like, because I live in the dorm still because I'm kind of working for residential life, and there's people that just don't want to come out of their rooms. They don't want to be social. They don't have to have that sense of belonging and being in a group.
Right. So for some people, it may really bother them to be part of an out group. For other people, they're like, that ain't an in-group I want to be a part of. Has there ever been an in-group that you've felt that way about? I think, would everybody here kind of say at some point in their life you have felt like part of the out group in some situation? That in-group that you weren't a part of, did you want to be a part of it? Yes or no? Kind of, let's talk about that. Why or why not?
I was in high school. I went to a very small high school. So it was pretty much all the girls that were all friends, except for like me and two other girls.
Mm-hmm.
And like blatantly, I could not stand those girls. And so that was like the in group. And I wanted no, like, playing softball with them was the very most I did with them because I could not stand them. Like, I had no interest in being in that group at all.
No desire. So even if they got extra benefits or things like that from being friends with each other, you're like, nope, still not worth it to me. Any examples where maybe you're part of an out group but you wanted to be in the in group?
I mean, the last high school I went to, so I went to 4 different high schools. It was one of those things. It was a small school. Everyone had been to school since before kindergarten. And coming in, like, they didn't really accept me because I had all these different experiences from all these different states. And a part of me was like, well, I wish I had your experience. I wish I had, like, this small group of friends that they're the only friends I know. But because I didn't, I have friends all around the world, so I don't regret it.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you wanted to be a part of it because you wanted that affiliation, but you didn't want to discount the experiences you had. Any other examples?
I was in 7th grade and I wanted to be on the cheerleading squad. And I'm really bad at cheerleading. Like, I can't do the herky thing. I tried really hard. And I practiced a lot and still upset about it. And I remember when I tried out, like, I wasn't like any of the other girls. Like, they all had, like, thick straight hair and I had big curly hair. And then I tried out and I didn't make it and I cried for, like, a week straight. But then I think back on it and I was like, man, I was never a cheerleader. Like, I just didn't belong there. But, man, I wanted the costume, but I wanted to dance on a full-length hello. Yeah. And I just realized it wasn't my path now, but in that time, like, I really wanted to be popular. Like, I wanted it so bad.
Yeah. So think about coaching a group of 5th grade boys on a football team, right? What happens with little kids' sports?
Parents get very involved.
Oh, yeah. We have, like, I think they're not called helicopter parents anymore. They're like lawnmower parents or like bush hog parents. They're just going to come in and mow you over and just be done with it. So you've got a football team, 5th grade boys playing, and, you know, you can only have how many people out on the field at a time? 11, right? But you've got 20 boys on the team, or 20 girls, right? We're going to call this a co-ed team, right? You've got a group of 20 players. And, you know, little Johnny hasn't played in a quarter, and Daddy comes walking up and says, hey, Coach, why aren't you going to let my little boy play? How do you, as a football coach, when you've got to choose 11 people to be out on the field, you're obviously creating in-groups and out-groups, right? How, as a coach, do you have everybody in the in-group for a 5th grade football team? Is it possible? Let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, if the kid's not want to start player, don't put him in a position that's not going to be action wants to play, where he's getting play time, getting run time, but he's not even going to see involved.
Mm-hmm. So what are you sacrificing? You said you can do it, you can put people in the game when it doesn't really matter, but what you're sacrificing something.
Sacrificing, like, your team on a certain play you vote.
Okay.
I think there's like two ways to look at that. And one is, I don't think it's a sacrifice, like, that just leads into the participation ribbon. You know, everyone gets their playing time in today's, and you know, that's how it is today. People will throw fits because daddy comes and throws a fit. But there's some coaches that are like so good, I think it's just like an innate talent at like making you feel a part of the team even if you don't play. Like there's some kids who are freshmen, they're always going to be JV kids because they're this big, but they're going to play because they just love the environment so much. It's like if they never play, they don't care. They're still part of the team and they're still in. So it's like if you just, I think it's just the coaching ability in that sense. Like I don't think you have to be like, oh, we're going to lose games because I want to make sure everyone gets playing time. That's stupid. My opinion.
Yeah.
I agree, but whenever you're in fifth grade, it's not like it's like, oh, let's go and win state whenever you're in fifth grade. Like, especially if it's just a regular in-season game, you should let everybody. I was one of the non-athletic ones. I know what it felt like to be like the last one put in, and like that was fine. I knew that's not what I was gonna do with my life, so I didn't care. But like the people that I was with, like they wanted to go in so bad. Like I don't know. You have to look at it from both sides.
Mhm.
And there's only one way to get better.
How's that?
You gotta play. You gotta get out there and do it. So if he's not letting him participate.
So that's something to think about too, is that, okay, you may have a person and they feel excited about being there and they're okay with not playing, but if they don't ever get to play, they're not practicing, getting better. So are you giving advantage to one group versus the other? Maybe. What were you going to add to it?
Well, like I agree with, I know also transfer, but I agree with that. And I also agree with Macy that if everyone, like you need to let everybody play because it's just great and we're not going to go out and win the Super Bowl. So, but at the same time, you have to be able to do it in the sense that you're teaching those kids that not all the time is going to be handed. You're not always going to get to play. Because I read an article last night that there's currently a mom in Missouri that is suing her son's high school because he didn't make the varsity soccer team. And he's too old because he's a junior, so he can't play JV anymore. But she's suing because he didn't make the cut to make varsity soccer team. Just because it's such a large school that they have to make cuts to have a team, and he didn't make the cut. And she's acting like his life is over.
Wow.
So.
Well, and so if the situation were rather than fifth grade team versus a high school team, would your answer be different?
A little bit, yeah.
But when are in groups and out groups the most important to consider? When could in and out groups have the most impact on someone? As a fifth grader or as a high school student?
I still think as a high school student, your emotions as a high school student are a lot more developed than you're like this.
You kind of know what's going on and you realize, like fifth grade, you might not really realize you're part of the out group, but senior year of high school, you're going to realize you're sitting the bench the whole time, right? Man, is this easy to answer? No, it's super complicated. And that's just looking at it from an athletic standpoint or an organization standpoint. Imagine in a job. What in the world do you do when you have in-groups and out-groups? Can anyone think of a time maybe in your job experience where there's been in-groups and out-groups?
So I was a pharmacy tech, but when I originally started working there, I was just like a clerk. I worked the drive-through, the registers, and all that. And so I definitely felt like an out person then because I was the new girl. Everybody had been there at least like 5 years, and I was the one that like had to go ask everybody to do something for me because I wasn't licensed. I couldn't legally do it. And then like a year into it, they did train me. They did license me to be a tech. So then I kind of felt in because then I was like able to like I was still kind of the new girl, but they had hired like 3 people after me. So it was like I kind of got to know what was going on because I was always behind the counter with them. I was stuck back in the drive-thru by myself, and
yeah,
I kind of got moved into the in-group. But when I went up front, like they would talk and include me, but I didn't like I always never knew what was going on.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like a lot of times when we talk about in-groups and out-groups in the work environment, new employees, so the difference between a group of new employees versus a group of older employees. If you're a new employee, are you going to be asked to go get lunch on the lunch hour? Probably not. You know, I remember even when I started here as a doctoral student last fall, you know, I come in, I've moved here from Alabama, I don't know anyone, there's a group of students that already know each other, 3 weeks go by and I don't think anything about it, and then I found out that people had been going to lunch together at least once a week, and I had never gotten invited. How do you think I felt? Kind of like, why aren't they asking me? Don't they want to get to know me? It sounds crazy. It's like, okay, I'm an adult. This shouldn't matter. But it matters. It happens. And so those are things that, as leaders, we have to intentionally think about is how are we developing relationships with other people in order for them to feel like they're part of the in-group. And ultimately, we're doing this because, and I think, we're probably going to go through this PowerPoint pretty quickly just because it is a lot of the book content. And I think we can really summarize LMX pretty simply. But it's all about understanding that leadership's a process, but we've really got to focus on the interactions between leaders and between followers. So going back to the question I asked y'all earlier, can you see where LMX might be either completely different or support parts of other theories we've talked about in class? How would y'all start to answer that? What's the first big connection you can make here with other things we've talked about? LMX focuses on what?
Followers.
Huh?
Followers.
Followers. And what with those followers? Relationships. If we even think back to the beginning of class and we started talking about trait theory, right? And we were kind of describing how people are. We kind of even said people are either more task-oriented or more relationship-oriented. But then behavior theory and now contingency theory is kind of saying, the amount you are of those things can change, and it needs to change based on the people that you're leading. Well, we know things that we can do to be more task-oriented, right? What are some of those things we can do? Like if you're not a task-oriented person, what can you do if you need to be task-oriented? Learn to be more organized. Learn to manage your time better. Keep checklists. We've kind of got those things that you can do. How does someone learn to become more relationship-oriented? Do you think that that's a trait, a personality characteristic? Can people be more relationship-oriented or not?
I think you just ask more questions or
Okay.
listen better, or I think those can be one.
Yeah.
But if you don't care, it doesn't matter. It's something that you have to want to do.
It also can come off very awkward. Like they can tell you're trying really hard, and that makes it feel very not personal.
Or instead of making it awkward, I feel like a lot of it is just working really hard on being aware. Just paying attention. Instead of having your nose in a book or on your phone, just listen to the way people interact.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you have to interact with them off the bat, just pay attention to how they act.
Absolutely. What were you going to
That's kind of what I was gonna say. Just being self-aware. I know that I'm very task-oriented and not very relationship-oriented. So I know that sometimes I have to be okay, think of the other person. Don't think of you just have to be self-aware and remind yourself to do it.
I think that LMX theory, or at least for me, what it reminds me, because I tend to be a task-oriented person too, is that relationships are so important to my ability to be an effective leader that I've got to make that a priority. And so for me, I almost turn developing relationships into a task. So it may seem silly, but I'm probably going to need to have a regularly scheduled breakfast with somebody that we get together every 2 weeks to catch up, because I can kind of treat it like a task, but that's an opportunity for me to make sure I'm connecting and building a relationship with that person. LMX theory really does, I think, helps give people some good feedback on how they can build relationships with people, but to me, it also highlights the importance of those relationships. So one thing that LMX research, so your book's going to talk a lot about research that's been done, relationships between leaders and followers is highly connected to people's job satisfaction, how long they stay in jobs, whether they leave, all of that. How many of y'all have seen, I don't know if y'all would see it on your Facebook feeds or not, but you've seen kind of some of those reports come out that say that people are more likely to leave their job because they hate their manager than because they hate their job. Why do y'all think that is? It's a relationship.
That's like the thing about my job. Everyone says my job has the highest turnover rate, especially like with the business I'm at, and it's because of like the person that we work under. So that's like our stigma, and that's the highest turnover rate.
Absolutely.
It really is 100% true, though.
Yeah. Yeah. People leave jobs more because they don't like the people they work for or work with than because they don't like the actual job they're doing. And that's kind of part of the world we live in, is you can work at different places doing the same things. So we have the ability to choose who we work with. And so for us as leaders, it's important for us to realize the impact that our relationships have on the people that we work with. Our relationships place people in in-groups or out-groups. And who do you think is more likely to leave, the in-group or the out-group? The out-group, right. And so LMX theory, you're going to see this term, it talks about a dyadic relationship, and that's just the singular. And dyadic means two, right? So dyadic, two people. The two people in this relationship are the leader and the follower. And so that is the focus of LMX theory. It is very individual-based, one-on-one between the leader and the follower, that dyadic relationship. You can kind of see here, it talks a little bit about some of these early studies that were done, and they call those kind of vertical dyad linkages, or VDLs. But that's essentially, we recognize that as a leader, you might have multiple followers. And so we've got to look at each individual relationship and see what those characteristics are. We can't this is a good example of where generalizable research doesn't work, because we can't really generalize overall and say this is what the leader's relationship looks like with this group of followers. Because even as a teacher, my relationship with each individual student is very different. And so we've got to look at that. And when that was recognized, that's where research after that said, but if we do take a step back, we can see that there's pretty distinct differences between in-groups and out-groups. And so those unique relationships matter. What characteristics of relationships do you think define in-group relationships? So even looking back at y'all's list of an in-group here at Oklahoma State, y'all gave me groups of people, but then y'all started giving me even more specific characteristics, right? We said maybe ethnicity, maybe religion, maybe what they wear, maybe the types of clubs that they're involved in, maybe the major that they're a part of determines an in and out group. In the workplace, what does the relationship look like between leaders and followers in an in group?
I would say it's similar lifestyles at the time.
Yeah.
Their kids are the same age, or their kids go to the same school, or something like that.
Absolutely.
The jobs that they do.
The jobs that they do.
I think the level that they're at.
Yep. So do you think that in a big corporation, an in and out group could be the managers versus the line workers? Probably so. How else?
You can also look at it like departmentally, like the manager or the CEO may have come from like a specific department, so they favor the department.
What does trust look like in these relationships? Do you think the leaders and followers trust each other as part of the in-group? Probably. Do you think, kind of going back to what Keely said earlier, do you think that the leaders expect more of the people who are in the in-group? Absolutely. So that's something that's also characteristic of in-group. What does the relationship look like between the leader and the members of the out-group?
Like in the book, it says that they still like entrust them to do things. They just don't build a relationship with them to go above that. Like they don't necessarily treat them poorly.
Right.
They're just like not buddy-buddy with them.
Right.
The relationship is more task-based.
The relationship is very task-based. It's very much based on whatever their job responsibilities are. There could be some trust there, but maybe not a whole lot. So there are some differences. And so if we look at the in-group, people that are in the in-group tend to have more information. How do they get that information? Well, if you have similar interest and your boys play on the same ball team together on Thursday nights, do you think you ever talk about work? Occasionally. So there's definitely that evidence of more information. They also tend to have more influence. So thinking about back to decision-making styles. If you are a leader that wanted to involve followers in making a decision and you chose to consult a group of people, who are you probably going to consult? The in-group. What are some issues with that, though?
They might not know the needs of the out-group.
Yeah.
And they might not be doing those things that need to be done. Like they might be the managers and not the line workers that are actually doing it.
Absolutely. So I would even venture to say that this thought of LMX, in-group, out-group, is huge in our decision-making process as well. You also kind of, again, these are some things that leaders have said about members or the followers that are part of their in-group. They consider them more dependable. They tend to be more involved. And I think it's just that feeling that there is a relationship there, so they're usually more committed to whatever they're doing. Then you have this out-group, and they're just seen as less compatible. So may not have similar interests, may not do the same jobs. So the relationship just isn't there. These folks usually come to work, do the job, and go home. Are there any other characteristics you'd add to in-group, out-group based on y'all's own experiences? Can members of the out-group ever be confrontational? I think it kind of depends on personality a little bit, but I know for me, if I've ever felt like part of an out-group, I get kind of heated. like I tend to fight it a little bit. Even if I don't want to really be part of the in-group, I don't like feeling part of the out-group. I don't want there to be groups, right? Like I freak out. And so I tend to be pretty vocal about that.
Well, I think like some people might be in the out group and they'll be like act like they're mad about it, but they never want to leave. Like this summer I was around some like strong personalities, and this girl was all about being a feminist, and that was fine. But she like saw that she was out of the out group and she didn't get the same privileges, but she didn't want to change that. She just, I guess, wanted to be heard.
Just kind of put her foot down in the sand. Yeah.
Like, I never want to be a sorority girl, but when you see, like, a group of sorority girls are always, like, prostitutes or, like, something, like, just, like, not that they care, but at the same time, like, oh, those are sorority girls. Like, not, or I live in sorority girls, oh, yeah, they're sorority girls. So it's not like I wanted to be them, but I always talked about it, like, oh, it's just that.
You kind of find ways to minimalize or marginalize the group that you're not a part of. Either way. Y'all, it's hard not to talk about in-groups and out-groups without talking about biases. Do y'all think that intentionally or unintentionally we make prejudgments about people that put them in an in-group or an out-group? Yeah. What do we have to be really careful of as leaders when we do that?
Not reading a book by its cover.
Not reading a book by its cover. Absolutely. And it's really hard. Probably one of the toughest things you can ever do is really sit down and vocalize what your biases are, because they're not pretty. We all have them, right? But by voicing them, what do? You become aware of them. And so as a leader, you're able to say, oh my goodness, in my brain, I just put this person in this category of people or in this out group. I don't even know them. I don't have a relationship with them. How in the world can I put them in that category? And so it hopefully kind of makes you start practicing ways of looking at people differently, approaching people differently, giving people the opportunity to develop a relationship with you, to be a part of that in-group. And so it is important that we recognize that prejudgments are a big part of this. Again, just kind of some more, LMX theory is one of those that has been studied a lot because not only is it something that's pretty intuitive, but it happens. And so it is easy to study because we see it happening. But what we have found is that when there's high quality relationships, so when the relationship between leaders and followers is what we consider to be high quality, all of these things happen. Less employee turnover, more positive outcomes or positive performance evaluations, more promotions, people get promoted more often, people are more committed to the organization. The work that gets assigned is more desirable because if you know someone better, you know what they like to do, so you're going to actually be able to assign tasks to people who want to do them, so they're excited about it. Job attitudes are better. More participation. I mean, this is a huge list of really good things, right? So I think LMX theory really challenges us as leaders to say, what can we do to have high quality relationships with everyone that we're working with? LMX theory does give this approach. It's called the 3 phases of leadership making. And so for you as a leader, if you're sitting here thinking like, you know what, I don't think this is something I've ever been very intentional about. How can I do a better job of building relationships with my followers and making sure that everyone's part of the in-group? The leadership making process says that there's 3 phases, that everybody starts out as a stranger, then you develop as an acquaintance, and then you have a mature partnership. And it kind of defines in the textbook what those 3 phases look like. I'd really encourage y'all to go back and read those because you can kind of see and probably identify in your own life people who are in each of those phases and figure out, all right, how do I develop these mature partnerships with everyone that I work with? And so it gives you, again, kind of some ideas there of what that influence looks like in each phase. What are some things you like and don't like about LMX? What do you like, not like?
The 3 partnerships, the 3 things, you might never have a mature relationship with them.
Yeah.
You might always get off.
So something to kind of point out with that I think is really good there, Demi, is that you may want a good relationship with them, but it may never happen. Remember, not everybody wants to be a part of the in-group, right? If you go back to the slide that has that vertical that dyadic relationship on it, and you have a leader and you have a follower here, does the arrow just go this way? No. It's a mutual relationship. So there is a piece to the puzzle that requires the follower to respond to the relationship. So that's a good point. Any other thoughts on LMX theory?
I think it makes you aware of in and out groups, like that, like they're acceptable, but it's like finding a line that's how to handle both of them without making one feel less.
Yeah. And I would even venture to say it's not so much that in and out groups are acceptable. I would say more that it's a part of life, right? Like it's there. It's inevitable. It happens. But we as leaders should be striving to reduce that, right? We should be striving to bring everybody into the in-group. But what you have to be careful there, and again, this is really, really important, is what is defining the in-group. You've got to be careful as a leader about the biases, those prejudgments you're making that are putting people in an in-group. Are they in an in-group because y'all have the same interests and you all like to go have a beer after class on Fridays? Or are they part of your in-group because they contribute to the task that you're trying to do, the goal that you're trying to achieve, right? I think a lot of times issues happen at work, not because in and out groups are created because of the workplace environment, but often because of these things that in the grand scheme don't matter, right? We define and divide ourselves sometimes based off of these characteristics that don't matter. So we have to be careful about that. So when we say we want to bring everybody into our in-group, I don't want to just bring a whole group of white females into my in-group, because what am I doing there? What's my bias? But if I want to bring anyone who's interested in leadership education and agriculture into my group, what has that just done? It's opened up the in-group to a wider variety of people. So we've got to think about that. So something I want y'all to do, and I want y'all to come to class with this on Thursday. For the next 48 hours, I want you to observe in and out groups. In and out groups that you experienced, what made them an in-group, what made them an out-group. All right? And so I want you to come to class with that to turn in, okay? So 48 hours, observe around you in and out groups. You can have just one example or you can have 10. The more the better. All right? I'll see you guys Thursday.